Everyone's been talking this week about how it feels like fall, and I can't deny there is a little nip in the air in the mornings. But we still have almost 2 months to grow flowers, and I intend to use every moment of that time. This garden has become such a sanctuary to me this season, and there are many more blooms to come before it's all over. So today we're going to talk about maximizing our flowers and our joy before the summer is through. As you know, I have put a lot of labor and love into getting tons of flowers this year. And I have gotten a lot, but one area where it hasn't quite worked out the way I wanted it to is with my dahlias. In this bed here at the base of the deck, I have a lot of cutie little dahlias. I have this streaky orangey red one, this pretty lilac boy, and a bunch of little orange ones. And I started all of these from seed. The fun thing about starting dahlias from seed is that you don't know what you're going to get. And I'm happy with the ones that I've gotten, but they are not great for cutting. They only tend to last a day or two in the vase. So I've just kind of been leaving them in the landscape because they are really pretty to look at. And the pollinators love them. I did get a bunch of dahlia tubers that are really good for cutting when they grow, but mistakes were made, y'all. In the back of the crescent bed, I planted half a dozen or so. There's one big one back there. There's this little orange one here, and that's the only one that's bloomed out of all of the ones that I planted. This one's getting pretty big, but I don't see any bloom heads on it yet. And this one is just very tiny. I don't think it's getting anywhere near enough sunshine. And looking to my right, there are a bunch of dahlias back here too. Some of them are really big. They've grown like crazy, but they just haven't bloomed. I had thought these dahlias would get big and tall before the zinnias got big and tall, but that's not what ended up happening, and they're just getting shaded out by the rudbeckia and by some of these zinnias. So I am going to cut some of those back in hopes that the dahlias will put on some more growth and I'll get to see them bloom. I have gotten so many beautiful rudbeckias this season, and they're perennials. They're going to come back next year. Plus, I have a bunch of other plants in other parts of my property. So I feel okay about chopping back some of these, especially because they're kind of bug-eaten. And I really want to see those dahlias bloom before the end of the season. So I'm chopping almost all of these rudbeckia back all the way to the ground. And I'm just chopping up the blooms and the stems and letting them return to the soil. I'm even pulling a couple of zinnias because a bunch of the zinnias back here have really bad powdery mildew, and they're not really growing that much anyway. They're each just producing one bloom with no side shoots. So I'm going to go ahead and pull a few of them out, and I'm hoping that the increased airflow will benefit not only the dahlias, but also the remaining zinnias, so that if the powdery mildew doesn't get better, at least it won't get worse. And we got one pretty little bloom. A little jacked up, but still very cute. I can relate. As for the other dahlias in the back corner, my husband did a lot of weed whacking last weekend to prep for the party, got rid of a lot of the cover crops. So they are getting a lot more sunshine and airflow than they had even a week or so ago. But they're kind of flopping on the ground. So I'm just taking a few minutes here to attach them to some stakes and give them a little bit of support. And hopefully that will help them put on some blooms finally, because they've been in there for months. It's time to produce. This is another set of mistakes that I made with planting my dahlias this year, because you'll notice there's no dahlias growing up here. I mean, there's a little bit of foliage, but there's no flowers. And what had happened was I got so excited about creating a rainbow ombre Animal Crossing garden up here that I just came out and planted like a couple $100 worth of dahlia bulbs in soil that I did not do much to amend. I didn't check out what the weed pressure was going to be like. I just got excited and planted all my fancy dahlias. And all season, I've been weeding, I've been feeding, I've been doing everything I can think of to help these dahlias thrive, but it just has not worked out. This is a hard space to work in as well because it's at the top of a fairly steep hill. Like, you don't want to tumble down there. And at the bottom of the hill, there's like a 6-foot tall retaining wall and then the street. So the people who lived here before us, they put down landscape fabric on the hill, which is something that a lot of people do when they're trying to keep the soil from washing away. But the problem is that you put the landscape fabric down, you put the mulch on top, and then over the next couple of seasons, that mulch turns into soil, and then weeds start growing on top of the landscape fabric. And that's the situation that we're in right now. There's tons of weeds on this hill, and it's very difficult to get to them to clear them away. So we're going to tackle this next season. We're going to see if we can make this into a productive part of the garden, or at least less ugly, because it looks pretty bad right now. Sorry to my neighbors. I could come out and weed more and feed more, but I feel like every time I feed these dahlias, I'm actually just feeding all the weeds growing around them. So I think I'm just going to chalk it up to lessons learned. I'm going to dig up the bulbs at the end of the season, and next year I'll put them somewhere where they have a little bit more of an opportunity to thrive. Zinnias like to grow here though, so maybe next year it'll just be all zinnias. I've been leaving a lot of flowers in the garden this week and harvesting a little bit less just because they look so cute out here. But they are mostly cut and come again flowers. And that means if I want them to come again, I gotta go ahead and cut some.
So begins one of the biggest harvests I've done all season. There's got to be 40 or 50 stems in this bed alone, and I'm going to hit all the other beds as well. And it is so much fun. Honestly, the garden has been a huge investment of time and effort all year. I've worked so hard. I've agonized over not getting the zinnias that I wanted, about not having created a good soil mix, about whether or not my front garden was going to do anything. But for all of that effort and love that I've put into the garden, I've been paid back 100-fold. I can honestly say that even with the craziness of the world right now, this has still been one of the happiest summers of my life. And that's because working on these flowers is good for my soul. I put my heart into them, and they put heart right back into me. Just watching them develop, attending to their needs, learning and experimenting with ways to make them happier and more bountiful, arranging them, and just sitting around the garden and in my house looking at them. It just makes my heart happy. When I have a bad day, spending time out in the garden smooths it all right over. And when I'm having a good day, the garden takes it over the top into full-on radiant joy. So that's why I work so hard. That's why I am going around the entire garden today, clipping as many flowers as I can, because I know the more I harvest, the more will grow. And there's just something really beautiful about that.
These have really been my emotional support flowers all season, and I'm not sure how I'm going to make it through the winter without them. So if you have any ideas, I'm all ears. I could really use a little help. I'm so fragile.
And I say that mostly, but not entirely, in jest.
But it is not fall yet. We still have lots and lots of flowers to enjoy. Thank God.
By the end of this harvesting binge, I certainly end up with more flowers than I have ever had before in my life. I'm like a dragon sitting on a horde of flowers surrounding me in all directions. And yet I still desire more. So you remember these zinnia cuttings we took a couple of weeks ago? As you can see, they have started to develop some roots. At least a few of them did. So I'm getting them planted up in the top tier of the green stalk that we put together last week. I'm also fishing a couple more seedlings out of the bed behind the green stalk, just because there's a few more back there that are growing but don't really have the space and the light and the airflow that they need to thrive. So I figured I would put them up in this green stalk and give them a chance so that maybe within the next 6 to 8 weeks, which is about how long we have until we should be getting a frost, we might be able to see them bloom. One additional flower equals one additional dopamine. You know what I mean?
It's kind of thrilling to realize that all of these flowers came from seeds, soil, water, sunshine, and me caring about them. All I had to do was pay attention and try different stuff until I figured out what would make them happy. It feels like magic, but really, it's just not giving up. And there's some kind of lesson in there, maybe. Don't mind me, I'm just gonna sit here and play with my flowers for a little while. Am I ridiculous? Possibly. But if that's the price for having this much fun, I'm more than willing to pay it. I hope you enjoyed looking at all my beautiful babies with me today. And if you want to see how I attempt to get through the winter without them, don't forget to subscribe and follow along. And please share any ideas that you might have in the comments, because I surely could use them. Have a wonderful week, friends. I'll see you in the next one.